It's another edition of Terry's Talkin. How you doing, Terry?
I am well, David. I am here, and we got a lot to talk about.
We do. Terry Pluto, award-winning columnist from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. I'm David Campbell, sports manager at cleveland.com. I want to apologize at the top, Terry. We missed last week. I was in the hospital for 2 days. I thought I was going to be back in time to do a podcast when you got back to town. And then I was in for 2 more days. So we had to skip last week. So I'm sorry. I know we told a lot of people we'd be back next week with some of their questions.
Well, you just need to stay out of the hospital. That's my advice.
If I learned
That's
anything
how you get to be a columnist. Like, don't get hurt. Stay out of the hospital. But what did you learn last week in the hospital?
Stay out of the hospital.
Yeah.
And also that, and also that apparently walleye fishing has cheating in it. Did you see
Yes.
this?
I am not surprised. My father was a pretty avid fisherman in the old days. Now, he was not a competitive one, but even if you get fishermen together, they all start lying about their fish. So I'm not surprised they would stuff sinkers and dead fillet of fish in that walleye.
Yeah.
thing.
Well, what's the fishing story? It was in a couple of years, the weights will be even bigger.
Yes, they always are. So there you go. But
yeah. So, but I was talking to Darcy Egan today, who covers outdoors for us, and he's putting together like a Q&A of just about behind the scenes. So I'm really eager to read that. And
actually,
we'll get that posted.
There are all these things. I was surprised the money was that big, but I guess the money gets big, and that's it. So
yeah. All right. Well, we do have a lot to get into today, Terry. One of the things I wanted to get to first was a couple weeks ago when we did our last pod, we asked fans. You said you were at the Medina Library, and the topic came up about which Cleveland team was closest to winning a championship, which I thought was a really interesting question to ask. So we asked some fans to write in and kind of put their thoughts into which team they thought was closest. And I want to read one response we got from Carla Bizarro. She emailed us and said the Cavaliers, obviously. Why? Because coaching and very good moves. Not to take anything away from Francona at all. He's made good choices at will. But the Cavs, huge expectations. The Browns, well, they're just the Browns. They don't find a way. They don't find ways to win the game. The Guardians and Cavs do.
I found myself actually saying that this morning when I went at the nursing home with my mom, Melva, the 96-year-old African-American lady who's been like my mom for over 20 years. And a couple of other people were talking about it. And I said, I'm going to the playoffs this weekend with the Guardians. And this lady was a Cavs fan. And another lady came by. She loves the Browns. She goes, yeah, and the Browns are the Browns. And we got to get past that sometime, which means they're going to mess it up. They're going to just let's do the Guardians first, then we'll do the Browns or the Browns.
Yeah. You're making me think, Terry. I follow a soccer team called Tottenham Hotspur, and they're known as Spurs, and they have a lot of the same issues as the Browns in terms of winning big games. And there's a saying, that's so Spursy. Like people say that it's so Spursy when they lose a game, and I wonder if that's going to catch on. Like it's so Brownsy.
I forgot who it was from the Steelers. One of the players says, them Browns is the Browns.
Yep, and for the playoff game a couple of years ago.
For the playoff game, yeah. It actually turned out to be wrong, whoever it was, but
it was Juju Smith-Schuster.
Okay, well here we go.
So
all right,
Guardians. Let's get into it.
I've been doing some quick scouting on the Tampa Bay Rays, and it's interesting, that if you think around Major League Baseball that the Guardians are faceless, at least in the national media. Tampa Bay really is. All right, for 5 points, what player, and you will know his name, leads Tampa Bay in OPS, which is on base, the only kind of modern stat I like, on base percentage plus slugging percentage, and that player is?
Are you going to give me some hints, or do I just have to
guess? It's a guy
it?
you know. The name would be very common.
All right. In OPS, not batting average.
No.
Or anything like that.
Although his batting average is very strong. His batting average is 296. I'll even give you that.
Okay. It's not Wander Franco.
It's Yandy Diaz.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, take that. That's why I mentioned before when we were just preparing, I said, there's a lot of Cleveland flavor to this. Yandy, who, by the way, kind of like, how you fall in player love with different guys. This year it was a dual thing of Will Brennan and Oscar Gonzalez. The year before it was Owen Miller. Once upon a time it was Ben Francisco. So I don't always hit them well. But Yandy Diaz was another one of my guys. And by a little background, well, they always think that Yandy Diaz went over there for, who was the heck was that guy they traded for him for? He was that awful first baseman. It was in a four-way trade, but we'll think of it in a moment. But the big thing at Yandy Diaz was a trade. It was a four-way deal that brought Carlos Santana back to Cleveland in 2019. And but Yandy is hitting. He's always hit pretty well. And he is hitting, here we go, 296, and his OPS is 782. He's just like solid. 9 homers, 57 RBIs. He's walked 78 times, struck out 60. Actually, those stats would fit in great with this group. And so he's had a nice career over there. But that's when you start doing that and you say, okay, well, who else do they have? It's a little odd that. How about this? Tampa Bay, here we go. Cleveland, 6th in runs scored in the American League. Tampa Bay, 11th. Remember, we're talking 15 teams. Home runs, don't hit them. Tampa Bay's 11th. Cleveland's 14th. So you can sit all you want in the bleachers and pray for a ball to come to you. Maybe Jose will hit one. But that's probably going to be it. G-Man Troy has 10, although, they have a couple guys with 20 on the race. The big thing these two teams do, they pitch and they pitch and they pitch. Tampa Bay, 3.39 ERA. Cleveland, 3.40. I mean, they're the same. They're third. They're basically tied for third in the American League. All right, another guy with Tampa Bay. This is kind of interesting because I kind of lost track of him. Francisco Mejia. Remember, he was a hot prospect with them. And, Mejia is a part-time catcher for them. And he's played 93 games. He's batting .242, 6 homers, 31 RBIs. This is a guy that hit a ton in the minors. Remember, he was in a trade with San Diego for Brad Hand. That he was the big deal there. And he just didn't do much with San Diego. And then finally, Tampa Bay picked him up, and so you got Francisco Mejia. For those of you, again, we're going deep in the weeds of people who like prospects. But the other guy is there, and he's second in. Now it's another common name. You should get this one. Second in innings pitched for Tampa Bay. David Campbell is.
And it's a former Cleveland player.
Yeah. That just about gives it to you.
Oh, Corey Kluber.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I said, that was a. So there he is. He's pitched 100. Remember, they don't like anybody to pitch past like 6 innings or, twice through the lineup. Shane McClanahan is going to start the opener for them. He's throwing 166 innings. He's 12-8 with a 2.54 ERA. Kluber may start the third game or may not, if there is one. He was 10-10 with a 4.34 ERA. They threw 164 innings. They just run relievers, and it just never ends with them. They have another Cleveland guy. I forgot all about this guy. Sean Armstrong kept bouncing up and down with Cleveland. So, of course, Kevin Cash is the manager. So they here's another name deep in the prospect well. J.P. Frierson, a reliever. All right. Did you ever hear of him?
No.
All right, he was he was with Cleveland, and he was traded to the Yankees in the Andrew Miller deal. And
How do you remember that?
Yeah, well, he was just a throw-in, and I'm looking. How about this? This guy's pitched kind of bounced up and down, but for his career ERA is 2.31. So there you go.
Huh.
All right, more than probably some people want to know about the Rays.
No, that's good, Terry. And the the margins in this series are going to be so small. It's going to be an error or some. I mean, it's like the Spider-Man meme. You've seen that Spider-Man meme on social media with the two Spider-Mans pointing at each other. This is basically identical approaches and just it's similar teams. You're right. They play the same way. It's hustle, it's defense, it's doing things right. And there's not much to choose here in terms of the more talented team, right?
I don't think so, because you could just go, like, and now if you're in Tampa Bay, you're quickly reviewing. Let's take a look again at what are those Guardians? Who are these guys? What, Oscar Gonzalez, and which Gonzalez is that? And oh, they have one more former Indian, or yeah, he was former Indian, Harold Ramirez.
Oh yeah,
He'll probably be in the lineup. So, all right, they could roll out Harold Ramirez, Yandy Diaz, and Francisco Mejia on their first game. Be ready. G-Man Choi, Korean import. There they go. And it's like the other teams that spend all this money sit there and look at, how do Cleveland and Tampa do it? This is, by the way, Tampa's 8th trip to the playoffs in the last 15 years. And they play in the East.
which is saying something.
Right. And then you turn around and they go, what is Cleveland? How do they, 17 guys making major league debuts and all this stuff, and they're the first team since the 86 Mets to make the postseason with the Major League's youngest team. So it's just
Terry,
something else.
Just to add on that, Terry, I've got the luxury tax payrolls here that I thought might be interesting. The Rays have the 23rd payroll, made the playoffs. The Guardians have the 27th highest luxury tax payroll. They made the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the top 10, there's 9 playoff teams. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 8 of the top 10 payroll teams made the playoffs. So if you took all the playoff spots, 8 of them are being taken by teams that finish in the top 10 in spending. The Mets, yes. Dodgers, yes. Yankees, yes. Phillies, yes. Red Sox are number 5, didn't make it.
Breaks my heart.
Padres. Terry, that's why they're waiting to put the TV schedule out. They wanted to wait and see if the Red Sox could make the playoffs one last time. They wanted to give one more take.
They'll probably want to take one of the Cleveland or Tampa Bay out. Can we just get rid of one of them?
Let's get the Red Sox in there. So the Padres are number 6. They made it. White Sox, 7. Didn't make it.
Too bad.
Braves, 8. Astros, 9. Yes. Blue Jays, 10. So out of the top 10 spending teams, the Red Sox and the White Sox didn't make it. And here you have the Guardians at 27 and the Rays at 23 that have taken 2 of the spots. And that is so impressive when you look at that.
I mean, generally, you look at that, the only other team that sometimes pops in there that's not in the top 10 is Oakland in the past. They always say, my baseball people tell me, Cleveland, Oakland, and Tampa Bay are playing, they talk about Moneyball. They're playing like defy the odds every year. And Oakland this year, they stopped trying because they want a new stadium. They want to move. They don't care. But Cleveland, I mean, that's why it gets me upset when people say that, the Guardians, quote unquote, aren't trying because they're just kind of looking at payroll figures. Do you know how hard you have to try to keep going into the playoffs every year when you're not in, when you're not in the top 10? And by the way, it's very common. Somebody gave me a stat a couple of years ago that 7 out of the top 10 usually make the postseason every year. That's like the average. So if you're saying there's 10 teams that make it, in general, you're looking at the other 20. You got a couple teams out of there, and that's it. And they tend to be in Cleveland and Tampa Bay.
Mm-hmm.
So it is kind of cool. They're like they're having their own, World Series. It's like we may not be better than everybody else, but we're probably smarter.
Well, and you wrote this in a column the other day, Terry. If the Browns had this kind of success, making a Super Bowl and almost winning it, and all this playoff success and playoff appearances, that they'd be building statues over at First Energy Stadium.
Yeah, they would. I mean, there's always a little bit of the frustration of you've come close but didn't get it. But it's like when I was writing the Vintage Browns book, I actually, part of the section there was to reset the thinking about the Browns of the late 80s, which it has to go well beyond the fumble and the drive. Those teams with great guys, they continually there. They had a quarterback, the town embraced them. All right, Indians of the 90s, guys and players that are beloved by fans still here. Mike Hargrove's a very respected, well-liked manager. Came close, but didn't win it. But is that really a negative? I mean, yeah, you'd like to win the whole championship, but my goodness, what runs those were.
Indeed. All right, Terry. Well, let's stay on the Guardians here. I moved the question up from our Hey Terry section. This is from Jack and Erie, longtime friend of the show. And Jack says, a subject brought up by Ken and Tony this morning. Those might be some sports talkers in Erie. I'm not sure. He says, what are the best jobs you think Cleveland coaches have done for a particular season? Mine would obviously be Tito this year, Stefanski in 2020, and any of the undermanned Fratello teams in the 90s, probably 1998, given that, as I recall, it was Kemp and 4 rookies in the starting lineup. So, yeah, Jack and Erie was wondering, Terry, how would you kind of place Terry Francona's performance in 2022 against some other really good Cleveland manager / coach performances?
Of course, you could roll in Francona 16 also.
Right. Yep.
That's as good as I've seen. And a one season, you got to give him credit. They always said, well, you had great players or whatever, but in 97, Cleveland finished 86 and 76 with Mike Hargrove. And that was the year they traded Kenny Lofton, and they also let Bell walked in free agency, and they had Marquise Grissom and Matt Williams and that. And that team went to Game 7, and I thought Mike was masterful taking that team, that deep in the playoffs and almost winning it. But, the thing about Francona is he's been here 10 years, 9 winning records and that, and there is nobody expected anything like this. And especially if they get past the first round, David, I mean, I know Tampa, like you said, they're playing the same type of game, but Tampa Bay has nobody picked Tampa Bay and Cleveland to make the playoffs, and most people thought Tampa Bay would have a much better record than the Guardians this year. I mean, the thing about the Guardians, I mean, as we speak now, they won 91 games. It's not like they went 82 and 80. I got an email from a guy who said, well, I mean, can't you just say part of the Guardians' record is because the White Sox and Twins underperformed? I guess you could say that. You could also say the reason they underperformed is because they couldn't beat Cleveland.
Well, and that's what Tony La Russa would tell you.
Yeah.
he just stepped down this week.
Yeah,
and is not coming back.
I forgot. When you grew up in Chicago, were you a Cubs or White Sox fan?
Both. Yeah, I like both teams. Yep.
Yeah. Well, your team should not have hired a 77-year-old manager.
Yeah. Well, they paid for it.
They did.
No doubt about that. But
I don't mean I'm 67. I just can't imagine doing it at that age. It's not a knock on anybody. Yeah, can you be a GM? Can you be an advisor? All that stuff, of course. But that grind of every day, I mean, that's what happens with Francona with his health. Sometimes he gets worn down. And by the way, this is because it's sort of delicate to dwell on, but the way Francona actually got through the season this year was critical because he didn't make it through the last 2. And you could see Francona's career here in Cleveland. After the All-Star break, his teams tend to play much better. The stats I don't have in front of me are much better, and they did it again.
We have a question about that if we have time later, Terry, from a fan. So my greatest Cleveland coaching performance of the ones we haven't mentioned was LeBron James in the 2007 Eastern Conference Finals. Terry, that's my pick.
Yeah. Well, 2016 or which one?
LeBron in the 2007 Eastern Conference Finals against the Pistons.
Oh, business, yeah.
Best coaching job.
Well, I'll tell you the other one. I'll give LeBron this: taking that team in 18 to the NBA Finals. Remember, because that was where Kyrie bolted, and they were just kind of trying to slap the roster together. That was pretty remarkable. I still think the best Cavs coach I've seen in all those years is Lenny Wilkins. I covered all them when they put those young guys together, and I mean that was a very special time. But unfortunately, it's just hammered because of Michael Jordan. I could see it. They got knocked out 5 times in the playoffs by Michael. 5 times by Michael Jordan.
Sad but true. All right, Terry. Hey, let's take a break. When we come back, we will get into the Browns, the loss to the Falcons. I know you have thoughts on the mantra of Terry Pluto, which is 7 is better than 3, but 3 is better than 0. So we can get into that. We'll talk about the Cavs a little bit. I want to get your thoughts on who you think is going to be the starting small forward on opening night. So think about that. We want to talk about your faith column from this past weekend. You went and talked to John Adams and just about the legacy he has built with drum in the stands and how many people have just shown such an outpouring of support for him. We can get into that. Got some good Hey Terry questions. And we'll get into all that when we come back on Terry's Talkin'. We're back on Terry's Talkin'. David Campbell and Terry Pluto. All right, Terry, let's get into the Browns a little bit. Very disappointing loss for fans to the Falcons on Sunday. The Browns had a lot of opportunities in the red zone. Where do you want to start here with the early decision to not kick the field goal on 4th and 3? What do you want to get into here? I'm trying to think how we dissect this.
All right. I am not a big anti-analytics guy. I think analytics tells you a lot of stuff. And I would understand that in the first quarter and it's 4th and 3, and you're thinking the average team should probably go for it, get the 7. Because, the old thing, 7 is better than 3. But when you're the Browns, and even though your offense has played fairly well, it's not been a juggernaut in the red zone all year. I think that it's barely over 50% conversion. And you also know that Atlanta is, yes, they have been scoring some, but this is not a team that should scare you to death with Marcus Mariota. Take the 3. But more importantly to me are 2 other factors in that game. Number one is the red zone play calling where Stefanski said that's on him. You better believe it's on him. He called those plays. And they talk about, I forgot whether they had 4 trips to the red zone or 3, but they only scored once in the red zone. And it was a broken play. Remember, Jacoby Brissett, I don't know what he was doing, but then he just tucked the ball under it. He vaulted over a guy and landed in the end zone. So that was a red zone scoring play. But then we had the strange one, the 4th down, where he throws the ball out of bounds. Remember, he's rolling out, and
nobody had a chance to catch it.
Nobody had a chance to catch it. So that was it. But the biggest to me, David, and I'm sure it's happened in NFL history, but it's pretty hard to imagine. Atlanta scored 13 points in the 4th quarter. Now, remember, they scored them all on offense, and they completed 1 pass. I think they only threw 1 pass, too, if I'm not mistaken. And it was, yes, a long gainer, but it was not a touchdown pass. They just ran it, and the 1921 Canton Bulldogs would have loved that play calling in the fourth quarter, or whenever Jim Thorpe was playing for them. And Joe Woods just was on. I know they didn't have some of the defensive linemen, but they were being run over by backup running backs.
So if you watch that drive, Terry, I think my conclusion was that was not scheme to me. That was just guys, they just got beat up. They just got pushed off the line and just overpowered by the Atlanta offensive line. And I see John Johnson today out in Berea talking about, we need to give more effort. And I'm like, wait a minute, you need to give more effort. And he said, yeah, we need to work on that this week. That's what he told reporters today. And I'm like, you're in an NFL game trying to play, you're playing for money, trying to get yourself in position to make a playoff run later in the season. And effort was the problem there. I just thought that was a really weird thing to say.
It is. And I know they're lighter on the line physically in terms of weight, and even some of the linebackers. But it's kind of like if they're running it every single time, and Mariota is having a terrible day throwing the ball, why not just load up the line, put everybody up there, and see what happens? Because remember, they were using guys that I had to look up. Caleb, somebody from Ball State. They even put a defensive back, Avery Williams, back there for one time, handed him the ball, and he got 21 yards. Now, I don't know he does some returning, but still, it was just incredible.
Well, and that goes back to what you were saying a few minutes ago, Terry, about that early 4th and 3. So analytics, all right, analytics are what they are, but you have to know the Falcons are probably going to score between 20 and 26 points. That's what they've been doing.
Mm-hmm.
Cordarrelle Patterson is banged up. And so it's like a race to 25, 27 points. And so on 4th and 3, I would have kicked it there. And Dan Lobby has a really good phrase. He says you're grading the result more than the process, and I get that. But if you're at 4th and 3 and you know it's going to be kind of a low scoring game, like just take the 3.
How many
And
people would have second guessed them, by the way, had they taken the 3?
probably none, but
Other than the analytics
if
guys
you're
in the booth.
playing, yeah, if you're playing the Kansas City Chiefs, like yes, go for
Yeah.
7. You got to go for 7 there. But this was a banged up Atlanta Falcons team. And the other thing I want to mention, Terry, the when they got down to the 1 yard line after the Donovan Peoples Jones catch toward the end of the first half, and they were it was
Second and
2nd and
1.
goal from the 1.
Yeah.
What is the most successful 1 yard play in the NFL this season? And the Browns are running it.
Yeah.
It
Quarterback sneak.
involves it involves snapping the ball to Jacoby Brissett and having him plow into the line, and he gets like 2 yards every time.
I mean, he's a man on that. I mean, really, because I've talked to some other quarterbacks who don't particularly like quarterback sneaks, including Kelly Holcomb, who had a teeny weeny fracture of the non-displaced bone in his foot. That's exactly what Butch Davis called it back when he broke his foot in a game against the 49ers. Remember, a teeny weeny fracture and a non-displaced bone in his foot. Thank you for sharing that. Well, that was a quarterback sneak. But Jacoby Brissett, he's a man. We've seen it. He's a man. He's 6'4", 230, and he's tough. And in fact, he probably wondered why am I not doing it? He should have pulled a Tom Brady, just done it anyway.
Well, yeah, if you call that quarterback sneak on 2nd and goal and 3rd and goal and 4th and goal, I mean, you have 3 times. I think they had 2 or 3 timeouts left. The clock wasn't an issue.
All you do is put Nick Chubb back there, and then you run your quarterback sneak because they're thinking Chubb's going to get it.
Yeah, and Kevin Stefanski after the game was like, well, we were down at the 1 yard line, and then we get the holding call. Well, the reason you had a holding call was because you called a pass on the 1 yard line, which opens up the possibility that you're going to get a 10-yard penalty for holding if something goes amiss.
I mean, you could look at it this way too. All right, so you're on the 2nd and 1. You tried Jacoby. Now you want to throw your pass? You could try it 3rd and 1 because now 4th and 1, I'm going for it. And then I double back to Jacoby again. So, although I probably went Jacoby, Chubb, Jacoby. I probably would have done that. Or, who I like on the goal line is Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt is tough on the goal line.
He is, and they ran Nick Chubb on 1st down on that, and that was the near fumble that got blown dead because he got stopped. So, yes, they tried to run, but like you've got Jacoby Brissett. He gets 2 yards every time he sneaks, so sneak it 3 times. And anyway, I just thought that was a little bit of a curious decision there, and it is a little bit of grading the result more than the process. But I thought the process was just very simple. It was just, you want analytics? How about the most effective short yardage play in the NFL? Run that one.
That one. And especially if you have a quarterback that is capable of doing it and he doesn't have a big injury history. Some of these guys, they get hurt. And the last thing you just want is I have cringed in the past seeing some of these really good quarterbacks run it. Brady runs it all the time. He doesn't get hurt. But so we'll see. But that does lead to that. I mean, but I also believe in the end, when you have had 4 games and 3 games of those games, you've allowed 17, 17, and 13 points in the fourth quarter. And it's not as if your offense was handing points to the opposing team. You're just giving up all these points on defense. That points directly at your defensive coordinator and your defense in general.
Well, as Kevin Stefanski said, there's a lot to be done for the players and the coaches and the front office to get this moving in the right direction. So, and I did get the sense from listening to Kevin Stefanski this week that he kind of realizes that he might have overthought some of this, and that he's going to rely on the players and their talent. So we'll see what happens. I just, the tone in his voice was kind of like, yep, I should have just kept it simple and relied on our guys. So we'll see if that happens.
I know somebody knows Stefanski pretty well, and they tell me if anything, he'll overbeat himself up on introspection of play calls and that, and that they have to talk him down a little bit from there. But it does lead, sometimes. Here, I'll try and finish the sentence. I once had a veteran NFL person tell me, the NFL, listen to this, is over-schemed and under-taught, or over-coached and under-taught, however you want to do it. In other words, they have so many schemes and so many plans, but they basically sometimes don't just dwell on the basics enough, which roll back to your Jacoby Brissett on the quarterback sneak. So I've always liked that phrase because it could go through a lot of things, in life. Often we over scheme it and we under teach it or just miss the obvious. So we shall see this week. Now this week, you got to score some points, and I mean we'll see if Jadeveon and Miles are going to play. I'm doubtful on Miles. I don't know what's going on with Clowney.
Well, we should know more today. So, hey, before we
You know
move
what?
on
You
from
know
the
what you're
Browns,
going to
Terry,
know today?
what's that?
Their day today.
And aren't we all?
Aren't we all? As you found out when you're in the hospital for 2
That's
days, it turned into
right.
4.
There you go. Hey, before we move on from the Browns, Terry, do you feel like Cade York is being kind of held back by this coaching staff a little bit? The Browns, they passed up the 21-yard field goal in the first quarter on the 4th and 3, which we just talked about. But also in the fourth quarter, they had a 4th and 6, and it would have been a 61-yarder. And you invested a draft pick in this guy, and they punted in that situation. And that if he made that field goal, they're in an indoor stadium down there in Atlanta, the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, no wind,
Mm-hmm.
artificial turf. You probably would want to give your big-legged kicker a 61-yard shot there. I don't know. What
Sure.
would you have done? I mean, do you feel
Yeah,
like in general they're holding
I,
him back?
I want to find out about him, and that's a good way to find out about him too. Of course, Phil Dawson will say that's heaven for kickers, because when he went from Cleveland to he kicked at Arizona towards the end of his career. Now he wasn't quite as good by then; he was in his 40s, but kicking in that dome, he liked that. And actually went from Cleveland to San Francisco with the win there to Arizona. So he said it's a lot different. And the other thing that you don't have to worry about in the dome is if you're a kicker. Remember, I'm into all this stuff. You have to watch your approach to the ball, like in Cleveland or Pittsburgh or whatever, because that turf can go out from under you. You're not even thinking about that on the dome. That ground is dry and it's stable and it's safe. So yes, I would have tried it. And if he missed, okay, so they get the ball on the 41 instead of the 20. You know. By the way, Atlanta has a very good kicker. That kid Koo. Uh, so there you go.
Yeah, so I mean I get it. Like in the opener, Stefanski they punted on a long field goal attempt because he said he didn't want Cade York's first kick in the NFL to be from that far
Yeah,
away,
it's like
which I get.
51 yards or
But
whatever.
I feel
Yeah.
like they're still kind of holding him kind of back a little bit. And
I don't
let's
know.
I don't know. Who knows? We'll see
It's
this.
like it's like kick it.
Yeah,
Try it. If it doesn't work, well, you're still learning a lot about your rookie kicker, and let him go out and try it. I'm not sure I want to kick a 61 yarder in Pittsburgh unless it's right at the end of the game, where it's tough to kick in that place or in Cleveland. But that place, you said, ideal conditions. So it'd be fun to sit into. Would love to sit there, like I'm sure when Andrew Barry and Dee Podesta and whoever else is involved in the critique of the game and listen to the coach. I'd be fascinated to hear his thought process on not only why he say didn't take the 3 points, or like the play call, all that kind of stuff.
all right, Terry, let's move on to the Cavaliers. Chris Fedor, our colleague who covers the team, he's actually going to be at the preseason game tonight, the preseason opener. I don't know if you saw this shit, but Dylan Windler did not make the trip
Hurt
because of an
again.
injured ankle. And you got to feel for this guy. It's just been
Yeah.
one thing after another for him. He was in the Derby to be the team's small forward. And I guess I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on if you had to kind of break down who's going to be the Cavs starting small forward on opening night. How do you see that playing out right now? I know it's early and there's some preseason games here and some time,
I
but
mean, the best quote unquote basketball player for that of now, if you put in your group of Chetty Osman, Karis LeVert, Okoro, and Windler, I don't think there's anybody else that's being consideration for that. The best basketball player is LeVert, but does that make sense? No. The last thing you need at that position is another guy who needs the ball. So I think you're either going to go into it's probably going to end up being Okoro because he'll guard anybody you want. I would just have Okoro shooting 9,000 corner threes a day because that shot's going to be there anytime he wants it. He had a 6-week span right after the All-Star break where he was hitting over 40% on that shot. And it was kind of like one of those birds that wasn't there in the beginning and then landed on his shoulder for a few weeks, and he was making them, then the bird flew away and took the shot with it. I don't mean to be, capricious about this, but that's exactly what it was. So it showed for that period, he was taking 3 a game, that he could make some. And that would be probably what they would do. Now the other possibility, I don't think they want to start this, but I think Dean Wade could end up in that spot too. And Chris Fedor and I were talking to Sidney Lowe, one of the assistant coaches. This was at the press conference for Donovan Mitchell before Wade even signed his contract extension. And we were talking about that. And he said, now don't forget Dean Wade. He said, we can go big with him at small forward. Of course, they feel Mobley can cover anybody, but do you really want to draw him that far from the basket? And I forgot about that. Wade had some nice moments. So I would throw him in that mix, not as a starter, but as coming off the bench and maybe playing more than we think. I'm just not an Osman guy. I've watched Chetty for a long time, and it feels like too long. He makes $8 million.
Yeah, he's been given a lot of opportunity too.
Yeah.
And Dean Wade, 6'9", which would put some length back in the lineup when you got the small backcourt.
Mm-hmm.
And they just gave him an extension, right?
And he can make the corner 3, and now Kevin Love, they were thinking about how to kind of work him in with the bigger lineup, but he would not be a small forward candidate. That would be half the where Mobley would have to go and guard the small forwards.
All right, so the Cavs are in Philly tonight. Chris Fedor is there as well. It's a 7:00 tip-off, first preseason game, and we shall see how that goes. It's going to be
David, too,
Survivor to see who comes out of that fray.
And also to see what Karis LeVert looks like, because if they start all those guys, which we're going to see Mitchell and Garland and Mobley and Allen and say Okoro, then off the bench you have Love and LeVert are really the only 2 off the bench that I could think of that are scorers. So that'll give them an opportunity. Now, I did talk to J.B. Bickerstaff after that press conference too, and I mentioned to him something a GM from another team told me. He said, the nice thing about the Cavs making the Mitchell deal is he says you really have 4 all-star caliber players. So you should have 2 on the floor almost all the time. And that sets up a chance to stay out of those 15-2 things where you get outscored. And he said the Cavs definitely, they needed just more scoring. And he talked about how at the end of the year last year, whether LeVert was hurt or lost or whatever, he just didn't deliver at all. So maybe coming off the bench with a fresh start, we'll see how that goes. But I think he's more important than people figure, but not so much as a small forward, but more like say I was thinking, Sexton as a scorer off the bench before the trade. Well, maybe he does that role.
All right, we shall see a lot of rotation questions and a lot of minutes questions that they will be answering here over the next couple weeks heading into the regular season. So, okay, Terry, your faith in UConn from this past weekend was really just everybody was sharing it and reading it the last few days. You stopped out to visit John Adams, the legendary Cleveland baseball fan, brought his drum to the game back decades ago, started banging it out in the bleachers, and just so much time spent out there, so many connections with fans, and you had a chance to sit and talk to John for a while, and just it was a really touching story. I just wanted to tell you how well done that was, and John was just so gracious with his time too. But talk about what it was like to be there with John Adams and kind of how he's doing and everything.
Even though I've known John for decades, I actually didn't know how it started. And one day a guy decides to bring a drum to a game. That's really what it comes down to. And he thought, well, this could be a lot of fun, because the old stadium with those wooden seats, people would bang them up and down. He said I was a seat banger too, and he thought, well, why not bring a drum? This is 1973 in August, and I looked up the Indians' average attendance then. It was a little over 7,000, so second lowest in the majors. Team stunk. It was terrible. So he called the team one day and said he wanted to bring a drum to the game. And they were glad anybody wanted to come to the game. And they said, fine, just don't bother anybody. And so he kind of went out to the bleachers. And actually, he said he started drumming it around. There were a few people there to bother him. So then he went to the top of the bleachers and banged his drum. And he wasn't planning to come back. Bob Sudik of the old Cleveland Press, a baseball writer who was covering this dismal team, thought, what is that guy doing out there with the drum? And that was back when the Cleveland Press was, back when we had PM papers. And when I was at Cleveland State, I worked part-time at the press for a year and a half, and they're always teaching you get the PM angle, the different angle, for the afternoon paper. So he went out there and asked Adams, well, what are you doing? And he told him the story about that. Well, you going to come tomorrow and do it? Adams goes, I don't know. Maybe I was just sort of trying this. Well, Sudik, who, by the way, as a couple other players from that day told me, he said, Bob was never afraid to take what you say and make it a better story. And they didn't mean he would say not a guy that Bob didn't write that guy wanted to be traded when he didn't, but just he would help your dialogue a little bit, make you a little more clever. So he just wrote, well, about this, and John Adams will be banging his drum again tomorrow for this team. He used to call them the Featherheads. He'll be banging the drum for the Featherheads tomorrow. So if you want to come out and hear him say hello, he'll be there. So Adams sees this in the paper because he knew Sudik. He said, well, I guess I better go again. And that started it.
That's really something.
Yeah, John now, and he went until the end of 2019, never missed more than 1 or 2 games a year. We were trying to figure out with postseason, everything else. We came up with about 3,900 games he went to. Home games, if you do percentage of the home games, say since, 1900, he went to 40% of all home games from 1900 to 2019. And then, unfortunately for John, COVID came in 20. He was still fairly healthy then. He was having some kidney problems. But and then 21 came and heart problems and broke his hip. And, he's been in O'Neill Nursing Home for over a year. And sent him a card, by the way.
Well, you mentioned that, Terry. I've got the address here from the bottom of your column, and I wanted to share that with people in case they did want to drop him a line. And you had some pictures in your column of just all the photos people have sent to John and get well cards, and just the connection between him and the fans. It's just glorious to see. But if you do want to drop him a line, let me get this out there real quick so I don't forget. Send it to John Adams, and it's O'Neill Healthcare Nursing Unit. It's O''Neil. So O'Neill Healthcare Nursing Unit, 20770 Lorraine Avenue. And that's in Fairview Park, Ohio. And the zip is 44126. Again, John Adams, O'Neill Healthcare Nursing Unit, 20770 Lorraine, Fairview Park, 44126. He would love to hear from all of you. So go ahead, Terry. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, that's fine. And the other thing about John is Curtis Danberg from the Indians lives in that area. I'm from the Guardians, excuse me, and has been stopping by every week. And by the time I saw John 2 consecutive Saturdays, and by that second one, they had only clinched the division title, I think, a couple days before. John already had his Cleveland Guardians Central champion hat and T-shirt, and he was ready to go. He's been watching the games, and I mean, another thing I found out about John, he actually is a very, very good drummer. I mean, he jammed with the James Gang and has played with a lot of rock groups and played bluegrass and all kinds of different drumming things. As he said, I could teach a monkey to drum like I do at the games in 5 minutes. That's always, and he goes, of course, that's what I'm known for. John was his day job. He worked at AT&T for over 40 years. And I believe his birthday is October 9th, and he's going to be 71. So, and also keep him in your prayers. I prayed with him both times I was there because, I mean, his attitude is great, but physically he's going through a lot. And I know the Guardians are trying to figure out maybe something for the scoreboard or something for the playoffs. I know they're looking at some things. So hopefully they will.
Well, we wish them all the best.
By the way, think about this. All these teams, I'm sorry, David, but they spend all this money on marketing to come up with something like a John Adams. How many different mascots you're going to have, all this stuff. I mean, millions of dollars, not just here, everywhere. But a guy takes a drum to the game, and 40-some years later, actually 48 years is how long he lasted, is a legend. No marketing guy could come up with that.
Those are the best ones, the ones that just kind of happen. And he's certainly a legend in Cleveland baseball, and we wish him all the best. And we'll be thinking about you, John. So hang in there, man. All right, Terry. Let's see. Before we get to the Hey Terry questions, Aaron Judge hit home run number 62 to
Yep.
pass Roger Maris for the American League record. There's been some debate about whether this is the quote unquote clean home run record because of the Sosa McGuire era and the steroids and everything. We don't have to get into that. But with Aaron Judge breaking Roger Maris's record in the American League, I know you have some connections to Roger Maris, and I wanted to give you a chance to talk about that.
Yeah, a long time ago, Tony Kubek, the Yankee shortstop and then longtime broadcaster, and I wrote a book called 61 about the Yankees. And the book actually was Tony's idea. We were talking about that because the Roger Maris had just passed away, and he always felt that people had a very poor understanding of the 61 season, what Maris went through, and all of that. And he had a connection with the Maris family, Pat Maris, Roger's wife, and so on. And I was fascinated to find out a couple of things. Number one was that Maris and Mantle hit 54 homers that year. Maris at 61. Babe Ruth's record was 60. Babe Ruth did it in 154 games. This was a 162 game season. So even though Maris hit 61, it was considered, an asterisk thing because of that. But what I did not know is that in New York, the fans and most of the media wanted Mickey Mantle to do it. He was their guy. Roger was the guy that came from Cleveland and Kansas City. He was sort of the outsider. But while they try to drum up this rivalry between Mantle and Maris, they shared an apartment in I forgot whether it was Queens or one of the suburbs. They used to drive together in this convertible that Mantle had to games. Then Mantle was thrilled that all the reporters were bothering Maris because they didn't bother him. And this was before the PR people figured out that you just need to bring this guy out for one group press conference and that's it, like they do. No, so he was inundated by the New York media all over the place. There was like 5 papers back then. And so what he did, and on top of that, Fort Frick was I forgot was American League president or whatever he was, but he was also Babe Ruth's ghostwriter. So he had a kind of a stake in wanting this thing, even after Maris got it, to still belong to Babe because that was his guy. So it just shows, even when you look in the rearview mirror life, there's all kinds of different agendas and things. And what Maris did was pretty remarkable. Then I wrote, well, what happened to him after that? Yeah, I think he had 27, and he badly broke his wrist, and then came back and played too early, and it never healed right. Then he went on to St. Louis, and he became more of kind of a singles doubles hitter, a good right fielder. Recreated his career that way. And then for a long time, he owned a beer distributorship down in Florida.
Ooh, all right, yeah, it's quite a story, and I can't even imagine what that race must have been like back then because it was the first time. I mean, the Sosa
Yeah.
McGuire thing was kind of the latter day version of that, but this was the first time there were two guys really going at that record that hard. The pressure must have been just
And
amazing.
Roger's hair was falling out at that point, and it was a really miserable experience for him. I mean, in retrospect, I don't think he ever wanted to hit 60 homers again just because of that. And he also viewed himself more as an all-around player. He was an excellent outfielder. And Mantle got hurt towards the end of that season. That's part of why he dropped off. But it's a hard book to find, 61. I'm sure maybe on Amazon or somewhere. But it's one of my favorite books I wrote because Tony Kubek was my co-author. He did the first interview with all the players, then I did second interviews, and this was where you really, even though he didn't write it, I mean, this was his book, and it gives a wonderful thing of what the Yankees and what New York was like at that time. So it's a cool slice of history.
All right, check that book out. Hopefully you can find it. It's got to be out there. So, all right, Terry, we're running a little short on time, Terry. Let's get through some of the Hey Terry questions for this week. This one is from Craig in Sebastian, Florida. He says, with the recent loss of Browns linebacker Anthony Walker Jr., would this not be the most wonderful opportunity to bring in a veteran that is now available? We never drafted him because the Browns did not understand the term pedigree. Clay Matthews' son is available and needs 8 sacks to get 100. We could use the
Oh,
veteran leadership with the young players. It would be a great place for him to retire where his dad played. Love the show. And that's again Craig and Sebastian, Florida.
boy, I don't
Probably
know.
too late for
Too
Clay
late.
Matthews
Yeah.
Jr., right?
Yeah. Too late.
He had a
Too
great
late.
career. I think that probably was something the Browns looked at a few years ago when the Packers
They
let him
just
go.
didn't like him. I don't
Yeah.
know why. I mean, as a person, they just didn't like him as a player. I remember I kept bothering them about that a few years ago.
All right. Here's the next one, Terry. It's from Alan Gilbert in Westerville, Ohio. He says, "Hey, Terry, with the Guardians' recent success, I was thinking about past teams and some of the greats, and for some reason thought about Phil Niekro. Why do you think there are no knuckleball pitchers in the majors these days?"
Because coaches and managers hate knuckleball pitchers. I mean, it's
They
as
do.
simple as that. They hate them. They say nobody can catch them, nobody can coach them. They don't want to. I mean, actually, one of the last really long-term knuckleball pitcher that had success was the guy with the Red Sox that Tito had. It was not.
Wakefield?
Yes, Wakefield. I started to
Hmm.
say Candiotti here, but it was Wakefield. But that was one of those where I always thought that was you kind of like having them because if nothing else, they could like pitch all the time.
Oh,
They
yeah,
just
they
sort of
eat
throw them
innings. Yep.
8 innings, but it's like they're just hated. And I think the same thing in the high school and college ranks. Nobody wants to deal with it. Periodically, an older pitcher tries to learn how to throw one, but I've always was fascinated with knuckleball pitchers. And when I was in Savannah in 1978, covered the Savannah Braves, that is double A team. That is when Jim Boughton, at the age of 39, was trying to make a comeback with the knuckleball, and he was trying to teach it to me. And it's not easy to throw, David. But at the age of 39, throwing a knuckleball in double A, and he hadn't pitched in like 7 years since he was last in the majors. He had like a 2.8 ERA and completed 12 games. It was phenomenal to watch it. And he went up with the Braves and he won a game or two in September. So
Yeah, it's kind of like you're right though, with all the analytics and the streamlining that these teams have done in terms of teaching and everything. Like if you throw a knuckleballer into the mix of your pitching rotation, it's like having a goalie in hockey. Like you could have special coaches and special, catchers, and like, there's always a guy who catches the knuckleball pitcher.
yeah,
Maybe it's just too quirky for them to deal with. I think you're probably right about that.
they
So
just don't want to deal with it.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, I'm sure if it was another Phil Niekro, okay, you put up with it, or Joe Niekro, or Hoyt Wilhelm, or some. I mean, heck, Candiotti and Wakefield were good pitchers. You go back and look at their numbers, and as you mentioned, their ERA sometimes are a little high because in a game that would get away, you just leave them out there. They're not going to get hurt.
yep. All right, Terry, let's make this the last one. This one is from Caleb Mackey from Columbus. He says, "Hey, Terry and David, Jose Ramirez, what a gift to Guardians fans. Jose is clearly underappreciated by the national media, but he becomes hard to ignore as he continues to accumulate career numbers and climb all-time lists. As a Hall of Fame voter, Terry, where do you put his Hall of Fame candidacy at this point? Thank you for all you guys do. Keep up the amazing work on the podcast. I look forward to it every week." Thanks, Caleb. We appreciate you for listening. What do you think of Jose's State of the Union in terms of Hall of Fame credentials,
If
Terry?
he could do this a couple more years, 25 to 30 homers and over 100 RBIs, um, I think they're strong. I really do. I also know that those of us who are aware of Jose and voters, we're going to have to do some real lobbying because I wrote a column in the middle of this year, The Secret Superstar, on Jose, because I just realized that people just missed it. And, I'm assuming he's going to spend, you know, perhaps his whole career here. Remember, he has a no trade. That's part of the deal. So that was one of the reasons he took a lot less money so he can control his own destiny. And um, he's remarkable. I mean, this is the guy that, by the way, the only manager he's ever played for in the big leagues is Terry Francona. He came
You don't
up at
see
the
that
end
every
of
day. Yep.
no, he came up at the end of 2013. He went back to the minors um, in 14 and maybe 15, and then in 2016 is where his career took off. And if you compare, by the way, his stats in 16 to the stats that Andres Jimenez have right now, and they were both about the same age of 23, very similar. Now, I'm not saying Jimenez is going to go in that direction, but the careers are very similar. And the same way Jose, he played second, he played short, he played left field for a while. before he settled in at third. And that was another thing that I love about Jose is like he just plays, the old line. He's a ball player. Yeah, he is. His uniform is dirty. He looks kind of squatty. He struts around, hits a ball in the box, thinks double, played all these different positions. And he and Ahmed Rosario, have really taken the leadership there, along with Hedges, on that among the everyday players. Now, some of the younger players are coming along, but you need just a few older guys who are about the right stuff, and those guys set the tone. And when, especially when you see Rosario and Ramirez playing so hard and yelling at the other guys to run, you better do it.
All right, Terry. Well, it's going to be a big weekend at Progressive Field, a 3-game series, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Really great sports weekend if you're a Cleveland sports fan. You got the Guardians playing, the Browns playing at home on Sunday at 1. I wonder if we're going to have a baseball, football simultaneous game thing going on Sunday afternoon at 1 if it's game 3 of the series. And then Ohio State's playing Michigan State on Saturday. So it's a really great sports weekend. Hope you enjoy it. We really appreciate you listening, and we'll catch you next week on Terry's Talkin.